Scott Rolen is a Hall of Famer. Welcome to the Just Baseball Show. It is Thursday, January 26th. That's Arm Layton. I'm Peter Apple. We have a great show ahead of you. We're talking Scott Rolen, of course, getting into the Hall of Fame. Some snubs that we might think deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. There's a couple of small moves. Alberto Mondesi is heading over to the Boston Red Sox. Michael A. Taylor is heading over to the Twins. But we have to talk about some less than desirable teams. You know, that's the nicest way to put them. Non-contenders. But some of the teams that we listed out could end up being contenders. But if you heard our last episode where we did biggest strengths, biggest weaknesses, we kind of did the where does Vegas project them from a win total threshold? Are they over 80? Are they under 80? And these just happen to be the teams projected by the Vegas sports books that should win under 80 games. But there's a lot of strengths for these teams. But first, Arm, Scott Rolen is a Hall of Famer. It's a good day for us Scott Rolen truthers. It's a bad day for the people who think it might be an abomination, as I've seen on some comment sections. And you know how comment sections are.
Yeah, I would say the very notably reasonable and level-headed TikTok comment sections think that it's an abomination or whatever. Okay, well, first of all, I think. First of all, congratulations, Scott Rolen. I mean, there's no higher honor in sports to be in the Hall of Fame. And I think the Baseball Hall of Fame is the hardest to get into, especially considering the fact that you have a bunch of hacks who make it theater and vote for just A-Rod or nobody or whatever else. And that could be a whole episode. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. But Scott Rolen gets in despite a bunch of, I would say throwaway ballots, which really makes it even harder for these guys to get in, especially the non-PED guys. I feel like just kind of get lumped into this whole sideshow. But Rolen had a phenomenal career. Does anything jump off the page? No. But sometimes I think we have to start to get away from like you need 500 home runs, you need 3,000 hits. If you do a little bit of everything, you're just a really damn good baseball player. And he did a lot of things. Didn't hit any of the major thresholds. But if you start to kind of queue up the stats of things that he did through certain thresholds that across the board that very few others did, he's in some elite company. And I even dug up, defensive WAR. And if you accumulate it, basically any guys with above 20 wins in defensive WAR and also putting up at least 2,000 hits and 300 home runs. I mean, it's a group of like Cal Ripken, Adrian Beltre, Gary Carter, Pudge Rodriguez. Like it's a very short list of Hall of Famers. The combination of hitting and defense that he put together, it makes him one of the best to ever do it. Is he jumping off the pages? No, but he's a Hall of Famer in my book.
He's a top 10 third baseman of all time, and it's reflected in the WAR numbers. This guy put up a 70.1 baseball reference WAR, and Brian Kenny actually laid it out really well. I think it was on MLB Network, where he came up with a team of all the guys who finished ninth in WAR all time at their position. And it's guys like, Willie McCovey, Stargell, like a lot of Hall of Famers. And I think the only one who isn't a Hall of Famer is Joe Mauer, who's going to be on the ballot. And
he'll be a Hall of Famer.
And he'll probably be a Hall of Famer.
I think
and
so.
We don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but there's something about this year specifically, and it's kind of been weighing on me for the Hall of Fame voting that I just kind of want to air out. And I don't really want to take it away from Scott Rolen because I think we covered it. He is one of the best defensive players in Major League Baseball. He played across 17 seasons, perfectly clean, great career, renowned by many as a great clubhouse guy, like deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. And this is kind of what set me off, Arm. This is from Rob Parker. I don't know if you know Rob Parker.
Oh, I saw Rob Parker's.
Yeah. And I like Rob Parker a lot. And this is why I was kind of discouraged by this. So this is his quote that he put out on Twitter. My Hall of Fame vote is my most prized possession on this earth. I take the responsibility very seriously. It's an honor and a privilege. But sadly, Hall of Fame voters are overcompensating for the steroid era and elevating guys who were very good to replace the tainted greats. #shame. And you look at his ballot and all he marked down was Gary Sheffield.
Yeah.
And so based on that, he should vote for guys like Manny Ramirez and Alex Rodriguez. And he came out and there's, obviously some gray area, whether some guys took steroids, some guys didn't. But like, who is the arbiter of that? Yeah. And the problem with the steroid era, and I'm not a guy, and I've said this before, I'm not a person who thinks one way or the other whether these steroid guys should get in. I
I
understand the
understand. Yeah, I
argument
understand
for the
both
steroid
sides.
guys, and I can side with that. But at the same time, if you're a person who says steroids should not be in the Hall of Fame, I understand. I get you. And this time period of when all of these guys have coming in has kind of ruined Hall of Fame voting for me.
Oh,
because for me, it used to be something I was so excited about. I even remember last year, like I was still really excited, but I think the draining of it, especially this year, like the conversations, they've just gotten so dull and they've gotten so subjective. Like there are over 500 writers who put in ballots. There's 500 writers in the Baseball Association. And I almost feel there should be 10 and we should know the rules. And if you fit the rules, you get in. And like Rob Parker is I guess they rank them all and he's number 75 in this list of 500. And like, he's coming out with that.
And
I love Rob Parker.
He said Gary Sheffield's, that's the only guy he voted for, right? It was just Sheff.
Only guy he voted for.
He said the 500 homers was like a magic number for him. And that's what it was. But like, what about Manny Ramirez and all the numbers he put together? I know those guys are like repeat offenders and whatever you want to call it with the steroids. But here's the stat, by the way, just for my own sanity. I want to make sure that I convey it properly on Rolen. And then I want to go back to that point. I put this out in last year's article when I was trying to make the case for Scott Rolen's Hall of Fame candidacy. There were 95 players in baseball history who had 2,000 hits and 300 home runs. But of those 95 players, only 6 had accumulated a defensive WAR above 20. And it was those aforementioned names that I gave you. They're all Hall of Famers. So, it's really, that kind of puts him in that bucket for me. And sure, we are maybe propping up the guys who don't have any implications to steroids. But guess what? Playing through an era that was littered with steroids and tainted and being able to still be one of the best players at your position during that time, I think should count for something, right? I think they should get a little bit of a bump for playing the game the right way during a time where a lot of players weren't, and they were playing against guys who had an advantage. Roger Clemens, a lot of these other pitchers that were, taking PEDs had an advantage. The one thing I want to say about what you were saying with the voting and everything like that, my initial reaction when I saw it's Hall of Fame voting season, I quote tweeted it and was like, God damn it. Like, this sucks. I was dreading it. I was dreading it because every ballot, I tried to keep it out of sight, out of mind, because the ballots just ruin my day, right? It's like something that we all hope to be able to do one day. And it just seemed like it was sideshow. It was like theater for a lot of these writers. And a lot of the people that vote on it now don't even really follow the game that closely and don't really, take that much pride in their vote. At least that's the sense I get. And when you're getting to the gray area of voting for one PED guy and not the other, that's where I'm like, okay, what is this process? It's got to be all of them, in my opinion, or none. I don't really get how you can, say A-Rod, but not Manny, or Sheffield, but not one of the other guys. I'll maybe give you the they had multiple PED suspensions versus one. Maybe I can understand that. But to me, it's kind of zero. It's all or nothing through that perspective. But again, just to get back to Scott Rolen, I think he's a Hall of Famer regardless. When you can play defense the way he did and still accumulate 2,000 hits and 300 home runs. And again, Jeff Conine on Outside the Box, you talked about the clubhouse guy, all those things. Jeff said Hall of Fame person, Hall of Fame player. And I think that does matter. It really does. So, I'm a big fan of Rolen's. I'm a big fan of third baseman, and he's one of the best to ever do it.
Another quote from our guy, Rob Parker. The Hall of Fame is broken when a player with 10% of the vote his first year gets 76% in his sixth year on the ballot. That means 56% didn't think enough of his career from the start. His stats haven't changed in 5 years. The voting has turned to applesauce. I just have so many problems with that quote from the top to the bottom, in the sense of just because he didn't vote for a guy this year doesn't mean that he can't be a Hall of Famer on other ballots with other players. There is not one version of a Hall of Famer. And he's basically saying if you're not a first ballot Hall of Famer, you shouldn't get in. And
there's a reason why you have to get 10% to stay on the ballot. Was he close to not staying on the ballot? Sure, but he had enough votes to stay on the ballot. If he exceeds the marker that you have, that you set to not have guys stay on the ballot that don't have a shot to get in, they put it at 10% for a reason. That's what you need to remain on the ballot, meaning that was the threshold that they deemed worthy to still have a shot to make it down the line. So it's almost undermining the exact rules that they created. I think it's become just so it's just so up for interpretation, and to a point of which I don't think anybody even knows what they're saying anymore. Even sometimes I don't even know what I'm saying when it comes to this shit. Like, it's just drives me nuts.
Think about this for a second. Do you think, because we started this company on basically on April 1st of 2021, and grinding through this, trying to post as much content, but I find myself now with our jobs on social media more now than ever. And I think a lot of people can understand that too, as social media has really taken over a lot of lives. And that's even accelerated over the past couple of years, especially now in 2023, with everyone making their ballots public and everyone feeling like their opinion is so important that they have to post a monologue about it or come out with video. Like, do you think that has made it worse for us? Like, almost the anonymous nature of it, where we just found out or we didn't, almost made it better. And then we wanted to see these guys' ballots. And then now it's gone so much and everyone has to post everything that now it's almost so dry and stupid that it's almost like we asked for this and what we got in return made it worse. Is
it's
fair?
almost like sometimes it's like when you don't want to meet your heroes because sometimes they're not what you think they are, right?
Exactly.
Maybe there were trash ballots through the years, but we live in a world now where we can track these. And Ryan Thibodeau does an unbelievable job on Twitter of tracking the ballots. And I think he did it through, just wanting to generate some excitement through the years around Hall of Fame voting. But what it's done is really amplify how flawed the system is and how ridiculous some of these ballots are. And as a result, it airs out more frustration. I think it's gotten worse because of the PED guys. And I understand, like, we all don't totally know how to tackle that situation. It's pretty weird. It's pretty difficult. There's a lot of confusion around it. But I think having it all aired out, like you said, where we're getting most of these ballots put out. And now, I think a lot of writers feel like they want to stand behind their ballots instead of submitting it anonymously, which I support. But now it becomes like this opportunity to grandstand. And now I feel like people almost are using their ballots to generate a conversation and generate controversy and things like that, because some of these ballots are legitimately, like, to me, they're like Skip Bayless ballots. It's like, you don't actually believe what you're saying right now. Like, you don't actually believe that is the proper ballot. Like, you think everybody else should have that ballot too? No way. It's just to shake it up. And that's not how it should be. And it's not where we should be. All I'll say is I'm glad somebody got elected. Fred McGriff should have been elected a long time ago. I'm pumped about the Veterans Committee. The Veterans Committee is a very, very, very good thing to have here. So now you have two really good players in here, and McGriff, who should have always been in, and Rolen, who should have always been in. Nothing's more embarrassing than having nobody in the hall. So at least they've got two guys going in.
Standing by himself.
Just bizarre, podium. Just bizarre. So I will say this. Another thing that these voters need to figure out before we move on to the next topic is what the deal is with Coors Field, because Todd Helton was so damn close, and I think Todd Helton's a Hall of Famer, but too. I feel like we're almost weighing Coors Field more than PEDs in some ways. Like, he can't pick where he played, and he dominated better than anybody has ever dominated in that stadium, and he still was good away from it too. That guy flirted with 400 one year. He's one of the better hitters we've seen. That's another one where it's like voters can't figure out where they stand on Coors Field. Like, at the end of the day, he can only hit where he is placed to hit. And he hit as well as anyone there. So that's another one where I hope we see Helton in there. And I'm sure we'll get a whole stink of the PEDs being a reason why we forced Helton in there too. But I think Helton deserves it as well. And that's another weird topic that people can't seem to figure out, is how much to dock a guy for playing at Coors Field when that was where he was drafted to, and that's where he was playing his career. Like, sorry.
I don't need to add anything else to the Todd Helton conversation. You said it beautifully. I totally agree with you. He should be a Hall of Famer. Might I just add, Billy Wagner should be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
One of the best relievers of all time from the left side. Might be the best lefty reliever of all time. There is no reason why Billy Wagner should not be in the Hall of Fame. There's also no reason why Andrew Jones should not be in the Hall of Fame. If I told you that a center fielder who was the best defender at his position at the time and still will go down as one of the best defensive center fielders of all time, maybe the best at his peak, who also hit 400 home runs, that's a Hall of Famer.
Fell off or whatever. So
that's a Hall of Famer. Like, there are just things where it doesn't make sense to me. And that quote from Parker where guys like originally might not have voted, but now are voting, and then that for some reason doesn't make them a Hall of Famer. That's the process that you go through. And
Yeah,
maybe
and
I'm
if he's the
reading
most
through it
worthy guy on the
wrong.
ballot.
Maybe Parker worded it wrong. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. I'd love to talk to him because I do respect his opinion. I like him a lot. And like, that's where I'm coming from, where I feel like social media has ruined it for me because I liked Rob Parker a lot, saw those two quotes, saw his ballot, and then now I'm like, dude, like I
What's
was
up?
your supporter. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I didn't agree with him. I don't agree with the voting. Those guys should be in it. And like you could obviously make the argument for A-Rod and Manny
Yeah, and all the
Ramirez.
PED guys, and yeah,
It's
and
that's
then that's
why
a whole nother can of worms.
I
But
have to be honest, I am excited when all of the PED guys are gone
can't wait.
and we just get to vote on guys without all the shit.
Exactly. That's the thing is there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, sure,
Yes.
you're gonna get Tatis on the ballot and a guy here or there, whatever it is, when we cross that bridge. But I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel where all of the best players on the ballot are not going to be implicated to performance enhancing drugs. So that is the exciting part. Like, I'm looking forward to that next wave, which I don't think we're far away from, like you said. And I think that's going to restore some basic sense and continuity and steadiness to this whole voting process. I think we're a few more cycles away from getting there. So I am looking forward to that because it just has created this whole confusion around the entire idea of what we're doing here.
Congratulations, Scott Rolen. You deserve it. 1,000,000,000,000,000,000%. Congrats to one of the best third basemen of all time.